On the occasion of the 100th episode of Aliens Explored, we would like to thank all of our listeners, both regular and occasional, who have helped us to make it this far. This episode, we will be going back over familiar ground and discussing the life and works of Dr Steven M Greer. Dr Greer was an emergency room doctor who retired from medicine to pursue his interest in ufology. He has pioneered close encounters of the fifth kind, where contact is initiated by humans, and set up the Disclosure Project with the aim of publicly disclosing the US government's alleged knowledge of UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence, and advanced energy and propulsion systems. This episode is dedicated to our Explorer of the Week, Jonathan Perna, who has gone the extra mile in supporting Aliens Explored by subscribing to our Patreon and enjoying the benefits. Check out what's on offer at patreon.com/Aliens Explored and see which tier is right for you.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
Welcome, listeners, to episode 100!
Yay!
Oh my goodness! Episode 100.
Who'd have thought we'd have lived so long?
I know. Well, yes, it's episode 100, of course, of Aliens Explored, your weekly podcast where we look into UFOs, the people who study them, all sorts of strange and mysterious and weird and wonderful things surrounding the subject. I am one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I'm one of your hosts, Neil Kelly.
Hello, Neil. Episode 100.
I know.
That's a hell of a milestone.
It is, isn't it? What we coming up for 2 years now, nearly?
2 years in 2 episodes' time, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we just started this really as a bit of fun during lockdown, didn't we?
I know, yeah.
And look at where it is. Oh, my goodness, my goodness. Now, I'm glad you mentioned about the 2-year mark, because something I want to mention to the listeners. The 31st, so episode 102 comes out on the 29th of July. And that's what we're calling our 2-year one. But actually, it is specifically the 31st of July is the 2-year anniversary of when we launched. Right. Now, I know you are working that day, aren't you?
I'm going on holiday on the 31st.
Oh, you're going on holiday. That's it.
I am, yeah.
There's a thing. Yes, you're actually travelling that day, aren't you?
I'm actually travelling that day,
You're travelling that day. But what I'm going to do in the afternoon, or here in the UK in the afternoon, I'm going to go live on Twitch for an Ask Me Anything session for our listeners.
Yeah.
An AMA, as it's known. I'm down with the kids.
Who knows how that's going to pan out? What they might ask you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now, because you're going to be travelling, you're going to be incommunicado. Neil, I'm going to invite you ahead of time. Not during today's session, but have a think about this. If you want to write me a list of questions that you would like as well, do please do so.
What the hell do you think you're playing at?
That might be one of them. You never know. But for our listeners, now, last year we did a live Twitch. It's actually going to be on a different Twitch channel this time. You might want to sort of subscribe ahead of time. This is going to be twitch.tv/hailing_frequencies. I will put a link in the description so that you can find that. But it's the Hailing Frequencies. It's basically my new Twitch channel. But yes, that's where you'll be finding the Aliens Explored. Ask Me Anything with me. But, right, enough self-promotion. That's not what we're here to discuss this week, is it?
No. We're here to discuss something that's appropriate to a 100th episode, something with the gravitas and the depth and the level of interest for our listeners.
Absolutely. Well, we're talking about a chap who we've mentioned quite a few times on the show already. Dr. Steven M Greer.
Actually a retired physician and now ufologist.
Well, interesting you say "and now," because he already was whilst he was working as a physician. So, an interesting little snippet. So we're recording. We record these episodes in advance. I think our listeners know that by now, and certainly our Patreons who get early access know that we record them in advance because they get access to them a week in advance of them going live. But yeah. At the time of recording today, Dr. Steven M Greer, it's his birthday tomorrow.
So, the 28th of July.
28th of July, he turns 67 years old.
Oh, blimey.
And do you know what? I hope I look that bloody good when I'm 67.
Yeah, well, happy birthday, Dr. Steven M Greer. If you're listening, it'll be long past your birthday by the time you... well, it'll be a bit past.
It'd be a few weeks.
A couple of weeks past your birthday.
Couple of few weeks.
Happy belated. So on the day before your birthday, we're going to wish you happy belated birthday greetings.
Absolutely. So yeah, 67 years old. He saw his first UFO aged 18, or that he knows of at least, aged 18. He saw it quite a close up, quite close range. And then he saw another one aged 35 as well.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned about him being an MD, a physician, rather. Yeah. So he got his MD in 1987, started working as an ER physician. So like George Clooney. He was in ER, wasn't
he? Yeah, he was, yeah.
Yeah, I'm remembering that correctly. Not the sort of program I would watch, but yeah. Yeah, became an ER physician in 1989. Because I think there's a delay in America, isn't there, between getting your MD qualification and then getting your license.
I have no idea. I've no idea what the procedure is here in the UK.
No, neither do I. It's only by looking up his history that I've picked that up.
Well, he got his MD degree from the James H. Quillen College of Medicine of East Tennessee State University in 1987 and received his Virginia medical license in 1989 to work as an emergency room physician, and then retired in 1998. So he gave it 9 years before he retired in favour of his ufology activities. Do Americans say ufology? Do we say ufology?
We say ufology.
We say not ufology. I'm showing my ignorance yet again.
Although it should now be with UAPs, wapology.
Yeah. Wapology.
That sounds like a euphemism.
I'm a wapologist.
Yeah.
I look at waps.
I don't know. Anyway, yeah. But
we say if it's once it's identified, it just becomes an apology.
Oh,
just say, yeah. Sorry, it was a cloud. Sorry, it was a reflection of the moon. And that came off the top of my head right then. Spontaneous humour, ladies and gentlemen. At no extra charge.
I like it. I like it. Yes, as you rightly say, he gave up being a physician in 1998 so that he could focus his time fully on ufology. But he had already been working in the ufology field for quite some time. So in 1990, he founded CSETI, the Center for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And it's through CSETI. So they've got lots and lots of logs of sightings and what they call sort of landing evidence, or I'm guessing physical evidence or photographs of landing sites. And it's also I know we've mentioned on the show previously about CE5. So they coined this term Close Encounter 5, which they term as human-led or human-instigated contact.
Right. So, I mean, it's a serious update from Close Encounters to the third time where we meet them. How many different kinds of Close Encounter are there now?
7, I think.
7. So, Close Encounter of the fifth kind, or CE5, is where actually we initiate the contact.
Well, there's the sort of the Hynek, the first 3. That was expanded out to 7. But I think where Dr. Greer talks about CE5, that's his own take on that. I don't think that's the official Close Encounter classification.
So Stephen Greer, Dr. Steven Greer, has written a lot and he's made movies, and he trained as a transcendental meditation teacher, and served as director of a meditation organization. And isn't this the key to his CE5s, that by meditating you can summon these things up?
It is. There are groups. In fact, there is an app for this. That you can get on your phone. There is an app, CE5 app, where you can find out about groups happening. I'll say locally, with a hesitant. Locally to one person might mean something different to other people. I mean, in America, locally might mean within 300 miles. Here in the UK, locally means walking distance. So locally, in inverted commas, you can find groups that will go out into areas, usually sort of countryside or wilderness or desert areas, where you can get a good view of the sky. And you get meditative groups who have certainly, they claim to have summoned, is perhaps the wrong word, but attracted UFOs, extra-dimensional beings.
Are there similarities between summoning up a UAP or an extraterrestrial in that way and summoning up the Dark Lord of the Abyss in a satanic ritual? I mean, it sounds very similar.
Well, yeah, you go back a few hundred years and, summoning
I'm going back to last week.
Extra-dimensional being. But yeah, summoning an extra-dimensional being via means of meditation would have been seen as witchcraft and black magic and that sort of thing.
But isn't this exactly the same? Isn't this, I mean, does he have religious fundamentalists chasing after him?
I don't know.
Spawn of Satan? I'd
be surprised if he hasn't. At least got some people sort of.
Because there is almost
a meddle with that. Huh?
Yeah, there is. I mean, I watched a Stephen Greer video, a movie, some time ago, and it is almost a religious kind of thing with him. Well, it seemed to me, anyway.
I get what you're saying. I'm going to say, because we both watched the same thing. I think it was Disclosure.
We watched the same thing, but I guess we both saw different things.
Or at least interpreted it in different ways, absolutely. I would say, for me, not so much religious, but certainly it had a very spiritual connotation to it.
Yeah.
But the trouble is, whenever you get into an area of, I mean, we're actually talking the science of metaphysics here, where consciousness meets matter and things like that. It's hard to not go into that sort of thing without it becoming spiritual. And of course, for a lot of people, spiritual does mean religious. Or it's hard to separate the two for a lot of people.
Well, if you are religious, that will be the spiritual dimension of your life, won't it? I go to church and I pray to Jesus. That's my spiritual life.
Well, that's the point. And for me, I'm only going to speak for myself personally here. Religious is when you start to bring in supreme beings, gods, in other words. Now, I respect anyone's right to believe in whatever gods they want to believe in, but I personally don't.
No, and neither do I.
But I do consider myself a very spiritual person. I'll do things like, I'll meditate. I'll do my crystal healing, for example. Now, that is a very metaphysical thing. It's a very spiritual thing. It's leaning in the direction of the sort of things that Dr. Steven Greer does through CU5. But I don't see a religious aspect to it. Now, are you seeing something else? Are you seeing more when you say about religion?
Well, my religion begins and ends with coveting my neighbour's ass and casting my seed on the ground.
But no, you said it seemed like a religious thing to you.
Yeah, he seemed to be speaking more like almost like an evangelist about it. His belief was sure and certain. He wasn't just positing theories and saying maybe this, maybe that. He was saying, yeah, if you do this, you can definitely meet these. You can summon up these extraterrestrials because we are all of one thing, and we can bring them about.
And he's talking from experience. This is something he has actually done himself.
I believe that he believes he's done it. I don't.
Okay.
No.
I'll go with that. But that's the point. So
just like I believe that someone really believes they've seen the vision of the Virgin Mary. That's the same thing. I'm prepared to accept that they actually believe it.
Yes, and do you know what? That's fair enough. But yeah, I can see why he might sound a bit evangelical, because I think when you do have a strong belief in something, particularly of a spiritual nature, and you talk about it with passion, yeah, where is that line between being evangelical and not being? Where's that drawn?
Yeah, I mean, he obviously, he's had a moment, because I was just looking at the timeline of his studies. So when he qualified with a degree in biology in 1982, so I guess he would have started in 1979. Then got his MD degree in 1987, then his Virginia medical license in 1989. So you're talking, that's 10 years of study. And if you study for something, to qualify for something, if you study for that long, you're probably expecting for that to repay itself over the rest of your life. And then 10 years later, he retired. Well, maybe being an emergency room doctor is more lucrative than I realised. But yeah, you study for 10 years, but then you've only got to work for 10 more years, and you can go and do what you like. Or really, he had this moment and said, no, that's it. Yeah, I know I spent all this time studying, and I've qualified in this, but now I've got to go and do this other thing. I suppose anyone can decide that something isn't for them, or in his case, found something much more important. He found a calling that drew him away from what his chosen path of study.
Well, it's interesting you say that about a cult, because it's not like he did his studies, became a physician, and then later on found this, found ufology, or ufology found him, or however you want to look at it. No, this was happening simultaneously, and you hit the nail on the head. You do all that study, you expect it to pay back. You expect to be doing it. Yeah, studying for 10 years. He obviously expected to be doing that for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that lends him actually a lot of credibility.
And it's also interesting when someone says, "I'm Doctor whatever, and I'm here to talk about ufology or whatever." You expect them to be a doctor of astrophysics or something, and no, I'm actually a doctor. If your chest starts getting a bit tight, just put your hand up and I'll.
Is there a doctor in the auditorium? Oh wait, I'm one. Yes.
Yes. No, I am actually a doctor of medicine. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there's I suppose, the flip side to that, whereby, we, hopefully most of us, do respect and acknowledge that doctors are intelligent, well-educated people. And there is, but we do automatically expect that their doctorate is in the field of their endeavours.
Yes.
So, like you say, yeah, you'd think he was a doctor of astrophysics or
physics or
something,
aeronautics or
of that nature.
Yeah.
Do you think that lends discredit to?
Not at all. Not at all. It was, I don't know why I even mentioned it. It's just that I know that certainly in Britain, there's no law that says you can't call yourself Dr. Stu Jackson or Professor Stu Jackson. The only thing there's a law against is actually claiming to be a medical doctor, a doctor of medicine.
Really?
Yeah, that's against the law. But you can check into a hotel saying I'm Dr. Stuart Jackson and that'll be your assumed name.
Well, I don't.
So, when you're checking in with someone else's wife.
I never use Stuart, so that's not
good. Not even as a pseudonym.
I mean, it's Stuart on my passport, obviously, but that's my driving license. That's it. That's legal documents. But no, if I'm checking into a hotel, no, I use Stu.
So,
it's I mean, partly so you'll know as well. We kind of register our names with Equity, the Actors Union, as our brand, and partly it's that because Stu Jackson is my acting name, but more than that, it's because nearly 10 years ago, I basically reinvented myself quite a lot, did a lot of work through therapy and such like, and I use it to separate who I was from who I am now. I was Stuart Jackson, now I'm Stu Jackson. It sounds like minutiae, and some listeners will be thinking that sounds like nonsense, but it works for me.
We're all constantly reinventing ourselves, I think.
Absolutely.
And we are different things to different people. If 100 people know you, they'll all know a slightly different version of you. But yeah, if you've decided to make certainly a break with a troublesome past, then what better than changing your name?
Yeah, well, it was
even an adjustment to it.
A life-affirming event.
Yeah, but all that shit that happened, all that stuff was done by a Stuart. And I'm not Stuart. I'm not that man. And you're not that man anymore anyway. No. But you've even got a different name now.
I mean, I take responsibility for everything that I did back then. It's not like I'm trying to avoid responsibility. I mean, we're digressing, so take your drinks, everybody.
Yeah. I was going to suggest to our listeners, anytime you're feeling down, just go for a little walk, maybe catch a plane somewhere, maybe change your name.
Well, I didn't move at the time. I've moved since, but I didn't move at the time. No, it was. I mean, I'm happy to share. I had a nervous breakdown because of where my life had led to up until that point. So it was useful for me to separate myself out with the things, not so much the things I'd done, but the things that had happened to me. Anyway, that's a whole other. We're getting way off topic now. Back on to Dr. Steven Greer then.
Yeah, now we've got to mention the Disclosure Project, haven't we? If we're talking about Dr. Steven Greer.
Which he founded also before he retired, so 5 years before he retired from medicine in 1993.
So the goal of that project is to, according to Wikipedia, to publicly disclose the government's alleged knowledge of UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence, and advanced energy and propulsion systems.
Yes.
So this is your hobby horse, isn't it? That the government's got crashed UFOs and they've reverse engineered the technology.
Absolutely. No, I'm definitely with Dr. Greer on this one.
Do you think that might be the reason why the United States currently, as we speak here in 2022, seems fairly relaxed about getting into an open war with Russia, something that was unthinkable during the Cold War? That we're actually, we've got generals talking about sending NATO troops in to fight the Russians. Do you think the Americans are thinking, actually, we've finally got the hang of this technology, we've reverse engineered it, we've got these amazing weapons and vehicles and whatever, they won't stand a chance. We can easily wipe them out, let them bring it on.
That is an interesting theory. A fascinating theory, I would say.
See, as I was asking, I was thinking, this is sounding stupider and stupider.
No, I can see how you would come to. I'm not suggesting you have come to that theory, but I can see why you might ask it. But no, it's the honest answer. I think they're doing it because they want to distract from the shit that's going on. In exactly the same way that the UK does. Like, oh dear, our Prime Minister's been caught committing crimes. Well, look over here. Here's this other thing happening that you need to look at.
Yeah, and it depends on who you're talking about. I mean, when America and NATO got bogged down in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it was going to be a long, endless, unwinnable war. And some commentators said, well, they obviously didn't learn the lessons of Vietnam. I would argue that corporate America did learn the lesson of Vietnam, which is that a long, bloody, drawn-out conflict is really good for business. Didn't we make a lot of money during Vietnam? How can we get the country bogged down in another long, unwinnable war? And how can we get the other side bogged down in a long, unwinnable war? I think no one seems to care much about what's happening to the Ukraine. I think if you want to look at what the US plan for Ukraine is, we'll just look at Afghanistan. That's your future, mate. A devastated battleground.
Yes, not good.
But not involving alien technology to wipe out the.
Well, they might end up using it. I mean, I'm of the belief that it's already in use and in plain sight. Anyway. But that's a whole other thing. I
mean, it's the closest I can think of. We're talking about reverse engineered alien technology was during the Strategic Defense Initiative, Ronald Reagan's Star Wars, and all these exotic weapons that were being developed to be used in space, either against other spacecraft or against targets on the surface of the planet. These rail guns that could. Would use an electromagnetic field to shoot rounds at a phenomenal rate from somewhere miles up in the atmosphere, and with pinpoint accuracy.
If you've not got gravity exerting an influence or the resistance created by atmosphere, then you can fire things at a much greater rate.
Yeah,
simple Newtonian physics behind that. I mean, my recollection of the Star Wars project, Reagan Star Wars. I was obviously quite young at the time. And I remember it being basically a way of them being able to shoot down potential nuclear missiles being fired.
Yes.
That was, I don't recall it being, the idea being to shoot down other spacecraft or anything like that.
Well, I think they're assuming that the Russians might have something similar, but we might need to. I remember there was a weapon. It was a satellite with a nuclear warhead in it, and when it erupted, you get the first thing you get in a nuclear explosion is the flash. Well, there'd be a series of lenses which would make that flash go in a direct line. It was a destructive long range ray, effectively.
Right.
I mean, the instant before the blast destroyed the satellite, there will be this concentrated beam of light that would roast anything it hit.
And of course, electromagnetic pulses, you get an electromagnetic distortion from nuclear explosions anyway, that just wipes out all technology.
Yeah. I remember when, because I was in the army at the time of the SDI. Yeah, SDI. So I was going to say STD. SDI.
Pronounce that correctly.
Yeah, I remember a Russian pilot defected to Japan with the new MiG, whatever it was called, codenamed the Foxbat by NATO. And when the experts examined it, they said, "Well, this must be a joke. This can't be a real aircraft. If one thing, it's made of steel, which is all right. It's better than wood, but it's not that great. And there's no technology in it. It's all just valves and things. But it took them a while to realise that this aircraft wouldn't be affected by EMP. That was their low-tech answer. They would be able to fly these jets over a nuclear battlefield.
Right, which would then give them superiority if they drop the nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
You've got to think about that sort of thing, Anyway, we've gotten slightly off topic, so we've hit that time in the show. So, Neil, summaries then. I know you said you believe that he believes, Dr. Greer, but to have given up a career as a physician and to have dedicated his life in a field where basically you're going to get ridiculed a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
Surely he wouldn't be doing that without a lot of credence to it.
I mean, we're assuming it's a rational decision that he made and he didn't have some kind of breakdown. I mean, doctors are under enormous pressure right from the moment they decide to become a doctor. Maybe he caved to that. I mean, people used to laugh at David Icke, but he was a retired footballer. You know, he'd had his career. It was kind of over. He could go off and do whatever he liked. So I definitely think, it happens with the regular religions. We certainly see it in Christianity a lot, that people suddenly become fired up with a belief about something. And maybe it's a belief system that they've had for a while, but suddenly it intensifies. Americans will have heard of something called Jerusalem syndrome, which is that usually young American Christians go over to Israel, they go to visit the holy sites, and they vanish. Their families lose track of them. And so they have to hire people to go and track them down. And they'll usually find them in Bethlehem or Nazareth, wearing a robe and carrying a shepherd's crook and shouting hallelujah at people. And come on, it's time to come home, Steve. It's a very common thing. It's called Jerusalem syndrome. It's
right. Okay.
But I do wonder how much. I mean, Stephen Greer, obviously, he's. I mean, you could almost say that by switching from emergency medicine to transcendental meditation, that he's just moved into a slightly different branch of medicine. That there is a therapeutic aspect to transcendental meditation. It's not all about just summoning up lights in the sky. It's all about becoming at one with the universe. And I guess for Stephen Greer, it's a universe in which there are beings from other planets.
Or dimensions. Or
Whatever.
We're not entirely sure.
But the whole bit about the US government, actually, I know this is where we differ. This is where a sharp line in the sand is drawn about the US government actually having crashed UFOs and being able to exploit that technology.
Well, I think. Yeah, so I agree entirely. The guy talks with passion, and I am absolutely certain he is speaking with belief. I was actually expecting you to basically say, he's done all this to make money.
Has he made money?
He makes a living at it.
Yeah.
you know.
And more than he'd have made if he'd just stayed being a doctor.
I don't know. But I was expecting that.
But yeah,
that from you. But no, yeah, I'm absolutely certain he believes what he's saying, and yeah, I agree with him. What a surprise! Shock revelation there for our listeners. But do you know what I want to know? I want to know what our listeners think about Dr. Steven Greer. Is he someone who is actually working hard to look after our interests and to get the information out there, or is he just a charlatan, perhaps, who's trying to make a few easy bucks? Who knows? But do let us know what you think via the usual means. You can email us, aliensexplored@gmail.com. You can contact us on Twitter and on Facebook by searching Aliens Explored. Or if you are one of our Patreon members, you get exclusive access to our Aliens Explored Discord server, where you can discuss Dr. Greer or anyone else involved in ufology or any other ufology-related subject with like-minded people, and maybe even people that will disagree with you, like Neil. So yeah, we get some good discussions going on in there. So yeah, check that out. All the links are in the description below. Join us next time, though, when we will be, no doubt Neil and I will be disagreeing again. We will be discussing the Majestic documents, the official US government documents talking about the UFO phenomenon. I
think we'll be more than disagreeing, mate. I think we'll be pints down out in the car park. Well, sort this out once and for all.
Handbags at dawn. Is that what it'll be? Well, we will have to find out next week, so don't miss that one. In the meantime, keep watching the skies, because that's what Dr. Greer does.
He does?
Yeah.
and maybe become the skies as well.
Yes, become one with the skies.
It's a Zen thing.
Right, take care for now.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Aliens Explored is a Figo Films production in association with Juicy Fomes. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit aliensexplored.com.